So, imagine for a moment that you are Eiji Aonuma or Yoshiaki Koizumi, and you have just released Ocarina of Time. Reviews of perfect 10 of 10s are rolling across the board, and it's selling really well. Like, even better than Metal Gear Solid well. Critics are calling this the game of the year, the greatest game of all time, a flawless, instant masterpiece. This game that you and your team have spent 5 years of your life on isn't just being considered a game anymore. It is now the thing that is going to bring the industry forward, a technological advancement, something that can't be called anything other than flawless. And then you're asked not only to do it again, but to do it in a year. Much has been said about Majora's Mask, and even after a near quarter century, these sentiments still echo across the gaming industry. How the reuse of Ocarina's assets allowed for an even tighter focus on the story's potential impact, on the themes, on how the feelings of despair and living after loss are baked into the very foundation of its world. Everyone here is someone you feel like you should know, but they have no way of knowing you. You are an outsider here, and your stay in Turbina is brief, but still life-changing. It's been over 24 years, and there's one thing that basically everyone can agree on about Majora's Mask, and that's how no one can agree on what this game is supposed to mean. Ask 3 Zelda fans what Majora is about, and you'll get 5 different answers. It's a game about losing your childhood. It's an extended metaphor about the 5 stages of grief. It's about Link slowly dying in the bottom of a hollow tree and his brain coming up with one last adventure as the oxygen leaves him. That one is my least favorite, if you couldn't guess. And even after all this time, despite everything the game says about hellos and goodbyes, there's a part of us that still can't let go. This is a video about Deltarune. There was this video that Patricia Taxon made back when the Don't Hug Me I'm Scared TV show was first coming out, all about how people talk way more about what the series does than they talk about how the web series makes them feel. And while we could talk about the reading itself and whether or not I agree with all of her takes in general, I agree way too much with her sentiments of how a surface level reading of art is not only valid, but is needed. And I like that video so much that I'm going to steal it. That was a joke. Link to her video in the description. Everybody talks up and down about what Deltarune is going to do, how the story is going to go, what its relationship to Undertale really is, da-da-da-da-da-da. And nobody is wrong for wanting to do that. Hell, I've spent the past 2 years working on my own Deltarune theory video by using the damn music as a jumping off point, which should come out in December 15th. But it gets a little tiring to see so many people say so confidently, this is what Deltarune is, this is what it's going to be, and not a lot of, this is what it means to me. Yeah, so today, we're gonna get surface level. I want to take a forest walk with you in a marked path, and I'm going to point out some very specific trees. Maybe we'll have time to get ice cream at the end if we can get back to the bus before it takes us home for the day. Did you remember to bring extra money for a souvenir? No? It's fine, you probably wouldn't have remembered where you'd gotten it from anyways. Noelle is going to become a Gaster follower because her mechanics point to her being someone that breaks down games and their codes and more. I like the bit at the end of chapter 2 where Susie spent the night at Chris's place because it made me feel like when I was a child staying up late at a sleepover even though I wasn't supposed to. So to preface things, I feel a bit obviously, an autistic man, and that shapes my relationship with media and how I interact with it in a massive and very specific way. I'm not even really sure how to go about explaining it to someone who doesn't experience this. It's like trying to explain to someone without a respiratory system how to breathe. I, like many autistic people, have these things called special interests and hyperfixations. They're basically a kind of activity that my brain really likes to hone in on. You could probably ask anyone what the difference is for them, and you'd get completely varying answers, but for me, I can tell what's going to be a special interest or just a hyperfixation based off of the time length spent between them. If I started up a new playthrough right now of Persona 5 Royal, ignoring every other responsibility I have, it would be the only thing I'd be able to focus on, and quite possibly the only thing I wanted to talk about for probably around 2 weeks. Or if I decided to start up a new animation project and I was really into the initial idea of it, I would spend every waking moment of my life working on it for around 2 weeks. You get the pattern here. If they were closed, they'd be that fetching Argyle sweater that you wear for a few too many days in a row, and then you take a shower and suddenly stop thinking about it the moment it's in the laundry bin. Deltarune isn't like that for me. Deltarune and any other special interest is that really cute varsity jacket that just keeps staring at me from the back of my closet. It is comfortable, it is cozy, it looks good with everything I wear, and it's a great statement piece. Sure, I might have to occasionally throw the thing into the wash, but no matter how many times it keeps ending up in my closet, I'm always going to end up reaching for the thing. This is both a positive in my life and a detriment. If a special interest flares up during a time where I really need to be focusing on something else, then it's going to kind of make my life a living hell for whenever I need to do the responsible thing and, sit down and do my taxes or whatever. Deltarune, to me, has always been easy to connect with. While I was mildly interested in Chapter 1 and wanted to see where the story would go from there, Chapter 2 is what really made me feel like this was a game coming into its own. And, coincidentally, that was also the time where it thoroughly seated itself right next to Undertale in the brain space of, I'm going to be thinking about this forever now. A game about a teenager who struggles, or perhaps even prefers, to keep to themselves, but is all but thrown into friendships and solidaric situations with the other outcasts in their life to get through the unpleasant business happening around them. Everyone around them is having a great time, thriving even, and sure, Chris can find moments of levity even for themselves in the chaos, but I have to ask, if people knew who the real Chris was, not the vessel being controlled by us, the player, but the person who has a very complicated relationship with us right now, wouldn't the different members of the party have liked spending time with Chris nearly as much? Would they have followed Chris's orders as closely as they do our commands? Do they even really care about Chris at all, or just what Chris can do for them? When I was a lot younger, I used to have a very unhealthy relationship with the media I cared about and the time I put into it. Why should I bother using my energy to pretend to be a normal person in real life, with its seemingly unnavigable social structures, people who would try and act like they understood exactly who I was and what I should be doing? The seemingly infinitesimal and invisible rules that no one ever bothered to explain to me until after I'd already broken them? I wasn't doing a good job at the whole being a person thing in their very narrow definition of it, and it wasn't just me who knew it. Everyone did. Compound that with being queer around people who would make your life a living hell if you so much as breathe a word about it. And you don't have a well-rounded person interacting with the world. You have a puppet. Someone who cannot make their own choices or their own mistakes. You have someone who bides their time to take back whatever scraps of control they can the moment they're safe to rebel. You have someone who snaps at their friends because they're safe to. Someone who gets upset at the people around them for adding on to that hurt, even if they knew and you knew that it wasn't supposed to be a big deal. Everyone's laughing and they've clearly already brushed it off, even started reaching out to you to help you off the ground after you tripped and fell. It wasn't anybody's fault, just a funny accident. No big deal, right? But it was a big deal to you. Deltarune, even when I was much younger, always felt like a story that was about how we use media as an escape. The Dark World at first felt like it was meant to be an analogy to tabletop games like Dungeons & Dragons, but now I know it's meant to be more broad than that. The Dark World is a chessboard, it's the internet, it's a television set. They're games, they're media, they're stories, they're something you escape to. Sometimes this can be a good thing. Susie bonds with Chris over the experience they shared in the Dark World and will leap at the chance to go back with them as soon as possible. She connects with Lancer, a fictional character, and forms a friendship that feels real, lasting, and important to her. To Susie, someone who's been more than implied at this point to have an unpleasant home life and who struggles to connect with kids her age, this is probably the healthiest outlet she's had in a very long time. For Birdley's case, he gets the chance to become someone else in the Dark World. Someone who's strong enough to wield a halberd and can let his guard down enough to express himself. Strangely, perhaps, but express himself all the same. He literally dresses like Vegeta and wears a scouter, and out of any member of the cast, he's the one who expresses himself the most through references to media that he likes. In the Undertale 6th anniversary stream, there's even a joke added into that version of the game about how he would be exactly the kind of person to make a documentary all about a speedrun he suspects is spliced. While the Dark World brings out his worst traits, his smart aleckness and the superior attitude especially, it's also a vehicle for bringing out his best. For Noelle, let's just say that escapism is a mixed beast. Like with Birdley, when used in the right setting and with the right people, it can be a wonderful means of self-expression and improvement for her. It's a way to reconnect with Chris and her dad, to start a new relationship with Susie, and learn how to be braver. When things get upsetting, it's a way to allow her to put away those memories until she's ready and drift off into a darker dream. Video games have had the most impact on Noelle out of any character, but she also seems the most ashamed of it. Her love and fear of horror is a huge part of her, but she feels like she has to hide those parts of herself around other people. It also doesn't hurt that her ride on the Ferris wheel with Susie reminds me of a different game with a different kind of confession. Childhood crushes are a powerful thing. And Chris, we get glimpses of who they are, but we don't know who they are because they actively refuse to give up information about themselves. Want to play the piano? They refuse. We have to learn more about that through Noelle, and that's thanks to extra canonical content. They would literally prefer to keep their eyes shut than show us anything more about Asriel, and why should they? We're not treating Chris like a person in these moments. Everything about the game hammers it into them over and over and over again. They're not the one making the choices here. They are the vehicle for someone else's. Their life is now a game, and not one they're having fun in if their behavior during the brief freedoms they seize or the small wiggle room the narration gives them is any indication. So what is the solution here? What am I supposed to be doing with all this information? Where's the fun here in these moments? What's the meaning in even playing if the game is trying to tell you that all you're doing is causing harm? Would it be better if I just stepped away? Would it even matter if I wasn't involved in this at all? But that's only if you're viewing escapism as a purely negative thing, something you're supposed to consume and discard as soon as you're done with it. I often hear people calling escapism a crutch, but the thing about crutches is that they're not supposed to hold you back. Crutches hold you up. Just like any other aid, or in this case coping mechanism, in its most healthy form, it's meant to be a tool you can use to help you get through whatever it is about life you're struggling with. When I was younger, it was a way to cope with the inherent othering I was being put through by my community. When I first became sick, it was, at the beginning, a way to escape from the extent of my newfound disabilities, and eventually, a way to come to terms with it. My relationship with media and the way I use it is healthier than it's ever been, and that's not because I threw it away. It's because I learned how to use it to connect with other people. At the end of Chapter 1, when Chris and Susie leave the Dark World for the first time, she puts her hand on Chris's shoulder and, her sprite changing to an awkward but extremely open expression, asks them to go back there with her again tomorrow. She's still the same Susie we knew at the start of the game. It's just that by sharing that experience with her, by connecting with her, she wants to do that all over again. I can't help but remember that whenever I think about Deltarune, all of my positive emotions that are tied to it come from the moments I shared with other people. The joy when I beat Spamton Neo for the first time and messaged my partner about it. The way I watched her play the Snowgrave route, terrified and peeking through my fingers the entire time. Her laughter when we met Swatch together for the first time and I instantly fell in love with him. Would I have enjoyed playing Chapter 2 nearly as much if I hadn't had someone to directly share it with? And even if I hadn't, there was still a whole community for me to get excited about with it. Gorgeous art and spiraling theories on Tumblr, memes and scattered think pieces on Reddit, boundary-breaking goodies, and so many videos to enjoy on YouTube. Deltarune, to me, has never been a story about what you do to escape your life. It's a story about what escaping can do for your life. It's been over 24 years, and there's one thing that basically everyone can agree on about Majora's Mask. And that's how no one can agree on what this game is supposed to mean. I wonder if we can start talking more about what these games mean to us. Quod erat demonstrandum.